that we have the idea of an argument, and now that we know that arguments are composed of sentences, let's dig a little bit more into the notion of the structure that I've been talking about. Remember, arguments are a certain kind of collection that is a structure, it's an organization. The sentences have to link up in a certain way. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So the basic structure of an argument, it has premises and a conclusion. Kind of looks like this. Premises 1, premise 2, these little dots meaning like a whole bunch more, then premise n for an arbitrary, like maybe 10 or 20, whatever, or sometimes 4 or 5, depending on the size of the argument, and then 3 little dots here meaning therefore, conclusion. So premises, basically that's what we were calling sentences earlier. So I'm going to introduce a new technical term. In addition to arguments being structures that are particular collections of sentences, we're going to now say premises. So there's your basic structure of an argument. So a couple other terms. So in addition to premises, you've got a conclusion. So the premises are written standardly, not always. We'll see that they come in different ways, but this is the standard form to give you a good idea of what's going on. The premises are before, and then we draw this little line, and then we have the conclusion. So that's the way to think of it for now. But of course, when you read books and articles, they don't write them like that. But you'll have to sometimes look at these books and articles and rearrange them to see how the premises fit together and how they lead to the conclusion. Now, the premises work together to support the conclusion. In other words, these premises work together and they lead to the conclusion. This leading to the conclusion is often referred to as an inference. You infer the conclusion on the basis of the premises. So I said that the premises work together to support the conclusion. Now, in an argument, when we're talking about them in the philosophical sense, this notion of support needs to be unpacked. This is a fairly subtle and difficult problem. We're not going to dig too much into it, but you should be aware of it, and you'll have to think about it as we go along. But for now, just think of it this way. The support that the premises offer to the conclusion as you make the inference, so you could have a stronger or a weaker inference. What does that mean? Well, think about it. Support can come in degrees of strength. So we could say that the premises, barely support or strongly support. There'd be a variety of ways to put it. But for our purposes here, to keep our terminology straight, because we're going to introduce a couple of new terms, when the premises work together and give complete support, and I'll talk a little bit about complete means, I'll give you an example. But when they completely support the conclusion, we're going to call that a deductive argument. Right? So when the premises completely support the conclusion, that's a deductive argument. You're making a deduction. Your inference is actually a deduction. All right. Secondly, the other much more broader category is when it's non-zero, so it gives a little bit of support. That's what I mean by non-zero. It gives some, finite, albeit small, but it gives some support, or, fairly strong, but it stops short of being complete support. So in other words, this degrees of support, we're thinking of two categories. One that's going to be quite big, from sort of like just barely support to quite a bit, but not complete. That's going to be an inductive argument. So here, your inference in an inductive argument would be an inductive inference, or an induction, if you like. So try and get used to this vocabulary, because it's going to be very important. I'm going to be using it in the lectures, and of course I will be using it on your assignments, and you will be expected to become more comfortable with it. It's really good terminology, though, because it allows us to be very clear about things of what we're talking about. And of course, in critical analysis, that's one of the big goals, is to be as clear as we can.